Today, we're looking closely at the latest in the Jamal Khashoggi case.
Yes, specifically through the lens of a brand new interview with his widow, Hanan Khashoggi. It was just published yesterday in the Pakistan Daily.
Right, an exclusive.
Right.
So this gives us a really crucial, very personal look at her ongoing fight for justice.
Exactly. And our goal here isn't just to, rehash old news. It's to understand her perspective now. Her renewed hope, maybe.
Yeah, and how she sees the actions of different countries, the obstacles, the potential paths forward.
Let's dig into it.
Okay, so this idea of renewed hope, it seems a lot of it centers on President Trump's current term.
Yes. She actually said, and this is quite striking, that she believes during his first term he didn't have all the facts.
That's quite a statement. What facts could she mean? The UN report, maybe? Agnes Callamard's findings?
That seems likely. That report came out later, detailing a lot. But it's interesting, she doesn't just pin her hopes on new facts.
Oh.
She consistently brings it back to what she calls American values. Democracy, justice, transparency.
So she's appealing to those core principles as the reason the U.S. might act differently now.
Precisely. And she's adamant that this expectation for justice isn't tied to who's in the White House. It's constant.
That shows real principle, especially given, well, all the politics swirling around this.
It really does. Which brings us to a difficult point.
Mm-hmm.
The situation with Jamal Khashoggi's children.
Ah, yes. There were reports they received compensation from Saudi Arabia. How does she address that?
Very carefully. She said she hopes they're safe and free, but she also expresses, uncertainty about whether their decisions were truly voluntary.
Implying potential pressure, given the circumstances.
Exactly. The lack of transparency is a huge concern for her. She also points out her own lawyer was imprisoned in Saudi Arabia.
Just for representing her.
Yes.
Yeah.
That lack of due process is, obviously deeply troubling for her.
And then she talks about Diya. How does that fit in?
Right. So Diya in Islam can be a form of compensation, sometimes seen as an apology or resolution. But she frames it here as the bare minimum.
So acknowledging a cultural concept, but saying it's nowhere near enough for something like this, for state-sponsored murder.
Absolutely. And she makes this incredibly powerful point, saying, I'm the only living victim after Jamal's death. This crime destroyed my life and my family's future.
Wow. That really hits home, the personal devastation.
It does. And you can see how that fuels her feelings about things like the U.S. sanctions and travel bans.
Yeah, she mentioned reports that some people implicated might not be banned anymore or might still be traveling to the U.S.
She calls that deeply disappointing, understandably.
And she's calling directly on President Trump for full disclosure. Names, actions taken, everything out in the open.
Total transparency. And she argues, quite rightly, that her lawyer needs access to this information. It's fundamental.
This push for transparency, it seems like the core of her fight right now.
It really is. It's about accountability, not just for the act itself, but potentially for who ordered it.
Okay, let's shift to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. She notes his 60 Minutes interview where he accepted some responsibility as a leader.
Yes, she calls that a positive step, but
it's not enough.
not nearly. She immediately points to the continued lack of transparency. What happened to the killers? Where's the direct apology to her? Where's any compensation for her and her family?
These are fundamental questions still unanswered years later.
Exactly. And then she layers on these very serious allegations about UAE intelligence being used against her and her family.
Which adds another whole dimension of regional politics and potential interference.
It certainly does. And that connects to her feelings about other countries involved, like Turkey, the UAE, Qatar.
She seems quite angry with Turkey, doesn't she? Accusing them of dropping the case for diplomatic benefits.
Yes, strong words. It's clear she feels betrayed there. That was a period when Turkey and Saudi Arabia were trying to mend fences after the murder, really damaged relations.
So, economic ties, regional strategy, those things likely pushed Turkey to prioritize normalization over the legal case.
That seems to be the calculation, yes. It's a tough reality of international relations.
And she extends that criticism to Qatar, too, suggesting both Turkey and Qatar use the tragedy for political and economic leverage, not just human rights.
It's a harsh assessment, but it explains why she's now focusing her efforts primarily on the U.S. jurisdiction. She feels let down elsewhere.
So back to the U.S. and the Trump administration. Why does she think this time might be different?
Well, again, it's this idea of the full picture. She believes they now have access to everything, including, crucially, the UN Special Rapporteur's report from Agnes Callamard. That wasn't available in the same way during his first term.
Okay, so more complete information is key. Anything else?
She also seems to think that Saudi Arabia's current role in regional mediation efforts might actually create an opening, a reason for the U.S. to engage on this again.
Interesting angle, kind of using current geopolitics to her advantage.
Potentially. And she's smart about framing it. It's not just about Jamal, she emphasizes. It's about justice, press freedom, American values.
Right, connecting it to these bigger principles to give it broader appeal and, frankly, more weight. It's about international norms, not just one horrific event.
But it's not all negative regarding the U.S. She does acknowledge getting help.
Oh, yeah.
She specifically mentions support from the State Department with her asylum and getting settled in the U.S., calls those major achievements.
That's important context. So parts of the U.S. system have been responsive.
Yes. And she talks about positive contact with Congress, a reply from Congresswoman Mrs. Rhonda, meetings planned. So there are avenues being pursued.
And the NSO lawsuit is still ongoing, right, against the spyware company?
Correct. Waiting on an appeal outcome there. So multiple fronts.
Now, thinking about Jamal Khashoggi himself, his relationship with the Saudi royals wasn't always hostile, was it?
No, not at all. Hanan points out he was closer to the older generation, people like Prince Turki Al Faisal.
And she believes Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman was actually misinformed about Jamal.
That's her firm belief. She even brings up that interview where MBS admitted he never actually read Jamal's articles.
Which is pretty revealing, isn't it, if you're supposedly reacting to someone's views?
Right. It lends weight to her theory that maybe people around the Crown Prince, people intolerant of any dissent, painted Jamal as some kind of threat using false narratives.
And she strongly rejects that, saying he was patriotic, wanted reform within the system.
Yeah. This idea of misinformation perhaps explains why she still holds out some hope that the Crown Prince's view could change.
But her own direct experiences with Saudi authorities sound harrowing.
Oh, absolutely. She describes being forced by Emirati intelligence to go to the Saudi consulate back in November 2018, right after the murder, and having evidence taken.
Terrible. And then the pressure later on.
Yes, in 2019, pressured to do a TV interview praising the royals. She refused. And the consequence, house arrest, her family blacklisted, it paints a picture of serious intimidation.
So even after she got to the U.S., has there been any direct official contact from Saudi Arabia?
Her lawyers apparently had some communication with Saudi lawyers initially. Showed some interest, she says, but nothing concrete. No official offer, no real outreach.
But she still has some hope, mentioning Princess Rima.
Yeah, it's quite poignant. She hopes that Princess Rima, who advocates for women's rights in Saudi Arabia, might understand her situation and maybe speak to the Crown Prince on her behalf, an appeal based on shared experience, perhaps.
A long shot, maybe, but you can see why she'd try.
Definitely. Okay, just to quickly recap the core events for everyone listening. Jamal Khashoggi killed inside the Saudi consulate, Istanbul, October 2018.
Right, caused a huge rift between Turkey and Saudi Arabia.
The first Trump administration delayed releasing CIA findings. The Biden administration released them, causing more diplomatic fallout.
Then Turkey dropped its case to mend ties with Saudi Arabia.
And there are these lingering worries about the Khashoggi ban, whether people supposedly banned from the U.S. for involvement are actually still traveling here. Questions about enforcement.
So, wrapping up, this interview really shows Hanan Khashoggi's absolute determination. She's not giving up.
Not at all. Despite all the political maneuvering, the setbacks, she's still pushing, especially now, hoping the current administration, with supposedly more facts, will act.
It really throws that tension into sharp relief, doesn't it? The individual fight for justice versus the big, messy world of geopolitics.
It does. Her voice is a powerful reminder of the human cost behind the headlines.
Absolutely. So here's something to leave you with. Thinking about Hanan Khashoggi's story, what does real accountability even look like on this global scale, especially when facing such powerful forces? And maybe more importantly, what impact can one person's voice truly have in that struggle?